You are looking at the last images alive of a young Mexican woman. A young woman who for months had been involved in a legal dispute with a doctor who had committed malpractice on her. What she didn't know was that her desire to receive justice after a plastic surgery that went wrong would end with this man planning her murder. If you want to know everything that happened, stay with me until the end of the video. Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Lesma. I hope you are doing very well. As always, I am very happy to be here with you for another day. Very grateful that you are watching me wherever you are. Today we have a case that happened in Mexico, that of Norma Patricia Ayala. Join me to see all the details. Norma Patricia Ayala Cano was born in Mexico in 1994. From a very young age, she showed a vocation for helping others, and that's why she ended up studying nursing. According to her family, she was a cheerful, warm, and very capable woman, and also very close to her younger brother.
Al pie del cañón con sus amistades, compañeros de escuela.
After graduating, Norma began to build a career in the healthcare sector, as she dedicated herself completely to her profession. Those who worked with her assured that for her, everything was more than an obligation. It was a fundamental part of who she was. In the following years, while living with her family in Iztapalapa in Mexico City, she maintained a very close relationship with everyone who helped her. In addition to that, she was also very close to her co-workers, whom she at one point described as a second family. Besides this, Norma's commitment was especially evident during the global health emergency, as she was always present in several hospitals, helping all the sick, and became frontline personnel. When everything returned to normal, Norma's life also continued as usual. In that context, she was contemplating specializing in the future. However, this never happened, as something horrible began in 2022. Norma decided to have a liposculpture that year at a clinic located in a central area of the city. On social media, the clinic in question promoted its services as the joint work of a specialized team headed by Dr. Esteban Israel Campos Serna, a supposedly certified plastic surgeon, and another doctor named Jose Humberto Cuellar Ferrara. The latter would be the one to take responsibility for Norma's surgery. About Jose Humberto, it is known that he was born in 1988, and according to professional records, trained from a very young age in the medical field. In 2012, he obtained his medical degree from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and later continued specializing. Then in 2018, he received certification as a specialist in anesthesiology. And 2 years later, he pursued a master's degree in aesthetic surgery at the Institute of Higher Studies in Medicine. By then, Jose had already managed to make his way in the competitive world of aesthetic medicine and practiced in one of the highest income areas of Mexico City, specifically in Polanco, where the clinic Norma had chosen for her operation was located. His professional activity was focused on aesthetic procedures and body surgeries, a sector that had experienced strong growth in the country. In this context, and trusting in the nature of the interventions, Norma decided to go ahead with the procedure. The clinic and the doctors gave her a lot of confidence. Mind you, during the consultations, she received some suggestive comments from Jose Humberto, as well as behaviors with sexual connotations. Despite this, the surgery was scheduled for May 2022, and Norma entered the operating room for what was expected to be a simple cosmetic procedure. But hours later, everything started to go very wrong. Norma came out of the surgery and felt a deterioration in her health. And on top of this, she didn't get a satisfactory solution to these complications. So she decided to seek care from other specialists and began to understand the magnitude of the damage she had suffered in the procedure. She knew she needed more complex care and went to a public medical center so they could evaluate her. With the completion of all the medical exams, the conclusion was reached that she had been the victim of malpractice, and she was facing major complications in part of her abdomen, and the consequences were visible on the outside, with a large scar. But they also manifested in another way. Norma lived daily with intense pain that wouldn't go away.
La lesión que tuvo ella en la parte abdominal, en la parte baja del busto, toda esta parte de acá, a ella se le necrosó. Vivía constantemente con mucho dolor, mucho ardor.
The circumstances soon took a deep toll on her emotional well-being and her quality of life. So the days went by, and in January 2023, Norma resolved to take action and report Jose Humberto to the authorities, not only for malpractice but also for sexual harassment and threats. The impact was felt quickly because after learning of the accusations, several patients at the clinic chose to cancel the procedures they had scheduled with him. However, for Norma, that didn't represent the end of the conflict but the beginning of a more distressing phase. And according to her, a horror movie had just begun in her life, because on several occasions they tried to take her life. She even said that on 2 or 3 occasions they had tried to push her off the subway platform.
En 2, 3 ocasiones ella nos comentó de que la habían querido aventar del metro.
However, even as the warning signs seemed to pile up, the authorities didn't grasp the gravity of the situation. Norma's complaints were downplayed under the argument that some events were simple, isolated incidents or accidents. And this constituted a form of revictimization, especially when sexual harassment was addressed.
Se llegaron a incluso hasta decirle que el abuso y el acoso sexual había sido culpa de ella porque uno como mujer lo provoca.
Meanwhile, other disturbing events were added to the growing threats. Norma's social media accounts were compromised, and they even hacked her bank account. By then, in the midst of a situation that was already deeply exhausting, she also had to deal with a growing sense of vulnerability. Norma didn't hide the worry that all of this caused her. In fact, on several occasions she told those close to her that she feared for her safety, but also for her families.
Dice, y yo estoy segura que me va a matar.
By March of that same year, 2023, a sense of relief seemed to come to her and her family when Jose Humberto was arrested. This feeling lasted very little. Just a day later, the supervising judge determined that he could continue the process while free. This, of course, far from bringing peace of mind, only increased Norma's worry. And indeed, after a hearing held the following month, the episodes of intimidation became more frequent. So the family requested support from the prosecutor's office to protect her. But all of these requests were denied.
Nosotros pedíamos apoyo para la fiscalía para resguardar la vida de mi hermana, que no había necesidad, que no había riesgo alguno.
Faced with such a scenario, in an attempt to provide her with some safety, Norma's brother began to accompany her every time she left the house. Meanwhile, convinced that the authorities were not acting with the urgency that the case required, Norma decided to make her concern public, and through social media she openly expressed that she feared for her life and held Jose Humberto responsible for anything that might happen to her. With all this background, and as time went by, we reached the morning of June 11, 2024. It was Tuesday, and everything started as a completely normal day for Norma. Shortly before 6, she left her house to head to the hospital where she worked. However, she never reached her destination. Just a few minutes after she set off, some neighbors in the area heard gunshots and reported it to the authorities. When emergency services arrived at the scene, they found a woman lying on the ground with no vital signs. By then, it wasn't known exactly what had happened. And then, at 6:30 in the morning, Norma's sister passed by the police cordon, but she didn't realize what had happened. It wasn't until a few hours later that she was identified. Norma had been murdered at 30 years old, and it was at that moment that her family was notified. The sister recalled how that morning when she passed by the police cordon, she thought that a family was going to receive bad news. What she never thought is that it would be her own family.
Yo vi el acordonamiento cuando me iba y lo único que pensé, dije, Dios, ¿qué pasó? Dale paz a la familia que esté sufriendo, ¿no? Sin saber que la familia que iba a sufrir, pues era la mía.
Meanwhile, investigators began to review the security cameras in the area, and the first important clue appeared. A series of recordings that allowed them to reconstruct step by step how the attack had unfolded. The images showed that everything had started before Norma left her house. Around 5:15 in the morning, a vehicle arrived in the neighborhood. Then, at 5:21, a person got out of it, while the driver continued to circle the nearby streets. Shortly after, Norma set off on her commute to work. She had advanced only about 230 meters from her home when the cameras captured the chilling scene. A man was walking behind her. Suddenly, as if she had perceived something strange behind her, Norma turned her head, and in a matter of seconds, the subject approached and opened fire on her. Then he quickly fled the scene in the direction of where the vehicle was already waiting for him. For investigators, those recordings allowed them to reconstruct the last minutes of Norma's life, and also suggested that the attack had been carefully planned. On the other hand, the analysis of the video surveillance cameras in the area allowed them to obtain an escape route and some physical traits of the possible attacker. With this information, the city's camera monitoring center launched real-time tracking, while maintaining constant communication with various officers deployed on the streets. The strategy paid off hours later, and they were able to locate and intercept the vehicle linked to the recordings. During the search of the car, officers found dozens of doses of illicit substances, as well as a cell phone that was secured as evidence. That same night, authorities also reported that a 23-year-old man named Marco Antonio Ramirez had been arrested. From that moment on, Marco Antonio became a key piece in understanding what had happened to Norma. Once he was handed over, authorities charged him with femicide and possession of narcotics. Because of this, he decided to cooperate and shared information that completely changed the course of the case. Marco claimed that both he and another man had been hired to eliminate Norma. But that wasn't all. The analysis of his phone revealed a series of different conversations. According to the recovered records, he was maintaining constant communication with the person who had ordered the crime. Thus, through a messaging app, he sent photos, videos, and voice messages to report Norma's every move in real time. Among the evidence was a photograph of the young woman boarding a public transportation unit. The records also showed that videos and various files had been sent. For investigators, the material showed a very high level of surveillance. In fact, one of the exchanged messages seemed to confirm that the tracking continued as she moved through the city. Most disturbing is that the photographs, videos, and communications had been recorded at different times of the day, and even before the attack. So, with the background of the complaints, the prosecutor's office began to focus its efforts on Jose Humberto, who became the main suspect of being the mastermind behind the crime. Meanwhile, outrage over what happened to Norma began to spread far beyond her family circle. And around those same days, dozens of healthcare workers participated in a march and held a tribute in her memory to demand justice. That same demand was present at her funeral. Before her remains were buried, family, friends, and loved ones held a protest. Despite the growing pressure, the investigation faced a major obstacle. Although suspicions were focused on Jose Humberto, the authorities by that time could no longer locate him. As the days went by, clues began to emerge that he had left the country, further complicating efforts to bring him to justice. That was how the case remained open, and over the following months, investigators continued to analyze various pieces of evidence, reconstructing communications and tracking Jose Humberto. In that context, an Interpol red notice was issued to locate him internationally. And finally, in early December 2024, the man was captured in Colombia. As it later emerged, he was residing in the area and making a living selling arepas. Shortly after, with the goal of having him transferred to Mexico, his extradition was requested. However, several stages would have to pass before a final resolution was reached. By November 2025, another breakthrough occurred in the case, as another accomplice was identified, who was given the name Javier and was arrested during an operation in Mexico City. According to the prosecution's hypothesis, the roles were well defined. Marco was the physical perpetrator of the crime, Javier was the driver and the one in charge of tracking Norma's movements, and in the end, Jose Humberto was the mastermind. As the process advanced, Marco admitted he received a payment of 20,000 pesos. And finally, in February 2026, a judge found him guilty and sentenced him to 43 years and 9 months in prison. in addition to paying financial compensation as reparation for damages to the indirect victims. Subsequently, he was imprisoned in a penitentiary center. For his part, Javier remains in pretrial detention, slowly going through his judicial process. But for the family, a fundamental piece still remained, for José Humberto to answer to justice. In June 2026, the media reported that José Humberto's return to Mexican territory was imminent. Despite this first conviction, for the family, something very important remained to be resolved, that José Humberto could be brought to Mexico. Thus, on May 27, 2026, the man arrived in Mexican territory through the Mexico City International Airport and was presented to a supervising judge who ordered the precautionary measure of pretrial detention. Up to the moment we are making this video, an official statement has not yet been issued by the Attorney General's office regarding how the legal situation is being handled. However, it is known that it is still in process. The important thing here is that everyone who had to do with Norma's murder is in custody. One of them already has a conviction and the other two will surely have to face justice in the coming months as well. Ultimately, all Norma's family is asking for is the justice they deserve, and that no other woman goes through what she went through. José Humberto is a doctor who needs to be locked up in prison until his final days, because everything he did to Norma really doesn't show his professionalism at all, and it also shows he is a danger to everyone. Now that you know all the details of the case, tell me what you think. And well guys, that's it for today's video. A very sad, very shocking, very tough case, which already has a bit of justice, and let's hope that both the doctor and the driver of the vehicle can also get exemplary sentences. If you found this video informative, remember to leave a like, and remember to subscribe if you haven't. I update 3 or 4 times a week, and if you're subscribed, you'll get a notification every time I upload a video. Now, see you in another case. Bye!